Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is Iran. Most everyone in the West is very mistaken about Iran. It's easy, actually too easy, to think of Iran as a monodimensional country, to think of it as a country run by the Ayatollah, as a country of religious extremists. Truth is, Iran is much more nuanced and diverse than many in the Western world gives it credit for. We've been lured into the misimpression that Iran is a monolith, but rather it is a multifaceted nation because all we hear about all the time is that Iran is principally steered by the religious leaders who adhere to Shiite Islam doctrine. Knowing that, it's really easy to jump to the conclusion that Iran is composed almost entirely of Iranians towing the line. Yes, some more aware readers and thinkers will know that there is a segment within the youth of Iran, in the country itself, known as Persia, that yearns to break free of the shackles of religious oppression, but only a segment. Like all Iranians, the younger generation living in Iran today is as divided as are their elders. And that is what makes the job of Iran's Ayatollah religious leader so difficult. The Ayatollah must pound the masses into religious submission. That is his policy. Iran is very large, about the size of 2.5 Texases. It has a population of approximately 91 million people. The Persian or the Fars population of Iran is only about 61%. That's hardly more than half of the population. That leaves a lot of people not in sync with the ruling religious extremist regime. And that played right into the hands of Israel. It's one of the reasons that Israel was so successful in infiltrating Iran. Iran is composed of many different ethnic communities. No love is lost between them and the Fars religious leadership. There's the Simanis, who live in the north of Iran, composed about 19% of the population. Their primary language is not Farsi. The official language of the country is Farsi. They speak Simani, and they are not alone. For many Iranians, Farsi, the language of Iran, is their second language. The Kurds speak Kurdish, a type of Kurdish. They compose about 10% of Iran. There's also the Khorasani Kurds, the Latastanis, the Khorasani Balaks, the Galaskis, the Laks, the Masans, the Arians, the Lurs, the Tats, and the Talish Balaks. And there are many more. One of the tools that Iranian Shiite religious leadership utilizes to control its citizenry is by instilling tremendous fear, by brutally cracking down on religious violations, by enforcing their laws and insisting that those who violate their laws, especially their religious laws, are severely punished, and sometimes even publicly punished. Violators and their families are sometimes punished as well. The crackdown is intended to set the example, to put fear of Allah in the remainder of the population. Case in point is the story of the 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, known by her friends as Gina. Her story unfolded on September 16, 2022. Gina was the Kurdish Iranian woman who removed her hijab from her head covering and created the global headlines. She was arrested and brutally beaten by Iran's morality, aka religious police, beaten so badly that she fell into a coma. She was rushed to a hospital, and it was there that she died. News of her death brought millions of people to the streets of Iran in protest. The police shot live bullets, live ammo, into the crowd and arrested countless numbers of Iranians. We cannot get an accurate count of the total number of protesters, but we do know that there were large protests in tens and tens and tens of cities throughout the country of Iran. Iran's religious leadership brutally squashed a potential revolt, all because a woman took off her hijab, her head covering. Under the rule of the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, the hijab was not just to be worn, it was to be worn properly, worn by every female over the age of 7. Women may not ride bicycles in Iran. That was a fatwa, a religious decree put in place by the current religious leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei. You may not walk a dog in public ever in Iran. Punishment is extreme, public humiliation and imprisonment. Muslims may not leave Islam. No public displays of affection are allowed. In other words, in public places, a man may not touch a woman who is not his relative. Women may not take selfies with soccer players. That would be extremely immodest. And of course, the media is heavily censored. Only state news and state shows are available to Iranians. No Western media, no YouTube, X, or what we used to call Twitter, no new media, no social media. As an end around all of these strict laws, which in essence forbids contact with the outside world, many Iranians use VPNs and satellite dishes to skirt the government's media blockade. The government aggressively shuts these systems and new ones pop up again. During Israel's bombing of Iran, Israel actually posted on social media sites telling Iranians the real news, telling them what was really happening. Israel even ran a quiz, a competition on one site, the Mossad site. After Israel twice eliminated Iran's chiefs of staff, the leadership decided to keep a tight lid on the identity of the new chief of staff in Iran. Israel's quiz asked Iranians who they thought the new chief was. One Iranian had the right answer, and Israel announced it to all of Iran. It echoed the voice of America during World War II. And in response, Iran announced that anyone clicking onto Israeli social media would be arrested and tried as a Zionist spy. The truth be damned, Iran considers itself a winner, always. But try as they might, no country, not even the Ayatollahs of Iran, can compete with the web, the World Wide Web, the WWW. And that might bring about the downfall of this repressive regime, a regime where a significant minority of their citizens pray for their downfall. Coming up next, points of view. First up is a column from the Wall Street Journal. It was published on June 8th, 2025. The column is authored by John Spencer. It's entitled, Netanyahu Wisely Arms Gaza Clans to Fight Hamas. Subtitle, Critics assail Israel for employing a strategy that the U.S. used in World War II, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Mr. Spencer is chairman of Urban Warfare Studies at West Point's Modern War Institute. This is a very important and insightful piece. We will start to hear much more about arming these non-Hamas militias, who may be the most important vehicle to defeating Hamas in Gaza. They have something at stake, but just remember, they are family clan militias. They want power and money, but they also want Hamas ousted. This is how Jonathan Spencer begins. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed last week that Israel is arming local clans inside Gaza to fight Hamas. Critics immediately called the move dangerous and reckless. Former Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman even claimed one of the groups receiving weapons has ties to ISIS. I fought in Iraq and commanded U.S. soldiers on streets of Baghdad, and I can tell you, this isn't a desperate gamble. It's a hard-learned, historically grounded strategy and one of the most effective tools in asymmetric warfare. Spencer gives us his personal experience from fighting in Iraq. He explains how important it is to get the locals fighting on your side. He writes, in 2008, I was on the ground in Baghdad when American forces shifted their strategy to arm local gang leaders and tribal groups, some of which had previously attacked U.S. troops with roadside bombs, to turn them against al-Qaeda in Iraq. We knew who we were dealing with. My soldiers and I met with men who had blood on their hands. But we also knew that defeating al-Qaeda meant splintering its power base, undermining its support, and making local authority figures an alternative source of control. That strategy, part of the broader Sons of Iraq movement, crippled al-Qaeda's hold on neighborhoods, helped stabilize cities, and brought space for broader security operations. Now Spencer explains that in war, things are seldom simple and clean-cut, but decisions and agreements need to be made to defeat the enemy. In order to win, you need to do certain things. He writes, Wartime alliances are rarely clean, and they are judged not by ideology, but by whether they advance the mission. In Gaza today, the mission is clear: destroy Hamas as a military force and a governing power. Operation Gideon's Chariots is Israel's new large-scale offensive aimed at dismantling Hamas's remaining strongholds. It involves 5 Israeli divisions conducting coordinated, clear and hold operations across Gaza, with the goal of permanently denying Hamas the ability to reconstitute military or politically in cleared areas. Already Hamas has lost most of its battalions and command structure. Its ability to control the population is slipping. Hamas has lost its stronghold over food distribution, once a critical tool of leverage. The U.S., Israel, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has delivered more than 8.4 million meals directly to civilians, bypassing Hamas entirely. Spencer wants Israel to apply this strategy because, as he writes, it will be successful if they do. He writes, it fractures Hamas's monopoly on force, empowers Gazans to defend themselves, and denies Hamas safe haven in communities it once ruled through terror. This isn't nation building. This isn't a forever war. This is step 1, destroy Hamas. Spencer now concludes by explaining that the purpose is to destroy Hamas. Do not lose sight of that goal, he says. He writes, victory over Hamas won't come from airstrikes alone. It will take local ground knowledge, legitimacy within communities, and the ability to fill power vacuums before Hamas does. Empowering clans that oppose Hamas, regardless of past affiliations, is a tactical necessity. You don't beat a shadowy embedded enemy like Hamas without taking advantage of the internal fractures in the society it dominates. Israel isn't arming Gaza clans to build a new government. It's arming them to destroy the government Hamas built through terror. That isn't reckless. It's fighting a war, and it's working. This is an excellent column. Thank you, John Spencer. Thank you so very much. Next up is a column from Ynet, published on July 11, 2025 by Naveh Dromi. It's entitled, Critics Who Call This War Political Have Forgotten the Cost of Ignoring Hamas. Subtitled, Opinion. As voices grow louder against the Gaza war, critics accuse leaders of playing politics, but their arguments overlook history, security, and hard truths. Ignoring October 7th means risking it again, and misplacing blame directed at Netanyahu could cost Israel far more than lives. There was a second column, by the way, right next to this one on Ynet, asking a similar but expanded series of questions that Dromi asks, and that one is called Partial Hostage Deal, a Reckless Gamble. So the issue is essential and not so simple as some may seem to imply. She explains that critics of Gaza war and how Bibi is handling the war and the fight to return the hostages are applying old slogans and ideas. This is how Naveh Dromi begins. Avigdor Lieberman is not walking back his statement that soldiers died on the altar of the coalition preservation. Nor is he the only one echoing that sentiment. Amnon Abramovich called the war a war of deception. Ben Caspit blamed Smotrich, saying the blood is on his hands. Yair Golan accused Israel of killing babies as a hobby. On Thursday, Ranan Shaked wrote that our hostages are rotting away for no justifiable reason, and that soldiers are being sent into battle simply to buy time. All these voices are repeating the idea that this war is unjustified, that soldiers are dying needlessly, and that the state of Israel refuses to extract the hostages from Hamas captivity because it simply doesn't care enough. The fact that these statements are made after October 7th reflects not just insensitivity to the bereaved families and the families of hostages, but a deeper refusal by this group to learn anything from that day. They are willing to put all of us back in the same danger we faced before. Dromi now shows that those complaining about politics are themselves guilty of making it political. She writes, today, those making these claims are saying the war is politically motivated, but they're the ones politicizing it. They refuse to recognize Israel's security needs in what may be the most important war since the country's founding. Worse still, They're exploiting the IDF soldiers fighting in Gaza to advance their own political aspirations, placing them above the national interests. Dromi explains that their critique is not substantial, but political. She explains the difference between substantial and political critiques. This is how she writes. If they had simply said, our criticism is about how the war is being managed, it would be one thing. For instance, maybe the IDF should reposition troops differently in Gaza, or consider military governance through tribal leadership to minimize direct involvement. That would be a policy debate. But none of the critics calling this war a war of deception are offering those kinds of solutions. Instead, they cling to outdated slogans, the same ones that led us to October 7th. Slogans that seeped into the military, influenced politicians, and persuaded prime ministers from Ariel Sharon to Benjamin Netanyahu that war should be avoided at all costs because the public can't handle it. Dromi explains that these critics are criticizing Bibi. The war against Bibi is their war. They just clothe it in freeing the kidnapped. This is how Dromi concludes. But it is they who can't handle it, and not for the right reasons. It's political hatred, nothing more. They call it a war of deception, but they are the ones trying to deceive. Is there any war holier in their eyes than the war against Netanyahu? Apparently not. Wow. This is a very powerful and very meaningful debate. The debate here is very complicated and much more complicated than we often see and it's presented to us. It certainly is political, that's for sure. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 7 cartoons today. Many of these cartoons draw a parallel between Gaza bombing by Israel and Iran bombing Israel. It is a strange parallel. The focus is on destruction. This first cartoon portrays Trump as Hamlet, asking to be or not to be, to bomb or not to bomb, or in this case, to attack or not to attack. That is the question. Obviously, Trump decided to attack, but the humor here and the cartoon are still very funny. Next up is a cartoon depicting the Iranian Ayatollah Khamenei, that's how we pronounce it, covering up or hiding the nukes. That is funny. The question is how many people really believe him versus believing Trump and Netanyahu. Sadly, many people think that Israel and the US aggressively attacked Iran. Here's a third cartoon. Trump is in his classic mode, saying that Iran should make a nuke deal fast, before nothing is left. Unfortunately, there's still not a nuke deal, and I do not see one in the near future. This fourth cartoon depicts the Ayatollah and Bibi in a duel back to back. The caption reads, "And fewer innocent deaths." The implication is that if the two dueled it out, we would have fewer innocent deaths and resolve the situation. Of course, the suggestion is absolutely ridiculous. It's ludicrous. It's funny. Next up is a cartoon showing those who come to get aid in Gaza are being beaten or shot by those delivering the aid. There have been some serious issues with the foundation delivering aid to Gaza. Everything is still not ironed out. It still needs to be worked out better. Next up are 2 body bags. One is labeled Gaza, the other Tel Aviv. The artist is drawing the parallel in the destruction of Gaza and the destruction of Tel Aviv. But there is no parallel. Despite the terrible destruction, as of last count, only 28 people in Israel have died from Iranian and Houthi attacks. Finally, this last cartoon develops the same theme. The sign is switched from Gaza to Israel in front of destroyed buildings. In Israel, buildings were destroyed, true. These are by ballistic missiles, 7-ton missiles, the size of a school bus, flying through the air. Their impact alone causes huge amounts of damage. It is a miracle that many more Israelis were not hurt and killed by these ballistic missile strikes. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. When Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took off from the US after his meetings with President Trump, he was on his official prime minister's plane called the Wings of Zion. His office released a statement that all the objectives Netanyahu sought to achieve during the visit were accomplished. That's significant. Some of New York's wealthiest moguls have united against the candidacy of leading anti-Israeli mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, launching a joint campaign. The Wall Street Journal reported this, that the group's name is actually New Yorkers for a Better Future Mayor, with the goal of raising $20 million. Israel estimates that part of Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile required for creating a bomb and buried underground survived the Israeli and American attacks during the 12-day war. The New York Times reported that this sighting, the senior Israeli official who added that the uranium might be accessible to nuclear scientists in Iran. French President Emmanuel Macron called for a joint declaration with Britain on recognizing a Palestinian state, he said, at a press conference with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, explaining, and this is a quote, "I believe in the two-state solution, which is what will allow Israel to live in peace and security with its neighbors. I believe we need to speak with one voice on this issue, whether it's Paris or London or anywhere else. Everyone needs to recognize a Palestinian state." That's the end of the quote. Hostage Families Headquarters has responded to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hint that Hamas would dictate the list of hostages to be released as part of a hostage deal. In an appeal to the government, the headquarters wrote, and here I'm quoting again, "We demand to receive full information about how it will be determined which of the hostages will be released and who will be sentenced to continue being subjected to torture and immediate danger. We want to know which officials will decide on the matter and what criteria will be used to make the decision." Following up on this very announcement, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told hostage families at a meeting in Washington after his meetings with President Trump, that Hamas determines which hostages will be released. The families asked how the released hostages would be determined, and he responded that Israel doesn't really have full control over Hamas. He later addressed the rehabilitation of Kibbutz Nir Oz, saying that Keren Kayemet Israel, or the Jewish National Fund, will resolve the issue. And finally, he acknowledged that Israel also shares the U.S. desire to end the war. In recordings of the conversation revealed by Haaretz, Netanyahu said, "Hamas intends to dictate this. We don't have a list." Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian spoke by phone with European Council President Antonio Costa, telling him that, I'm quoting again, "continued cooperation with the IAEA depends on correcting its double standards regarding the Iranian nuclear issue." According to him, and the quote continues, "any additional attack against Iran will be met with more decisive and painful response," unquote. Meanwhile, the channel Iran International, associated with the opposition to the Ayatollah regime, reported that a caricature of the IAEA chief Rafael Grossi was shown on Iranian television, during which he was called a traitor and that they would deal with him. That's interesting. In a significant turnaround, the U.S. State Department has approved the possible sale of equipment and maintenance services for the Lebanese Army's A-29 Super Tucano fighter jets. The announcements about the potential deal, valued at $100 million, was made by the Pentagon. The A-29 Super Tucano is a multi-mission aircraft that can be used for training and light attack operations. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. This music video was taped on October 21st, 2023, exactly 2 weeks after October 7th massacre. It is the rabbi and cantor and the congregation of Central Synagogue in Manhattan. It is very moving and very powerful. You might recognize them from the regular programming here on JBS. They are singing Achenu. It is a prayer recited when the Torah is returned to the Ark during the weekday morning services. The prayer was written over 1,500 years ago. It speaks to redeeming Jewish captives who were kidnapped by our enemies. It is so fitting and so appropriate. This song/prayer has become the most common song in Jewish gatherings, in synagogues and temples, and Jewish events organized to draw attention to our helpless, kidnapped victims.
Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, hanetunim betzara, betzara uvashirya, haomdim ben hayam uven bayabasha. Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, hanetunim betzara, betzara uvashirya, haomdim ben hayam uven bayabasha. Hamakom yerachem, yerachem aleichem, v'yotzihem mitzara,
on your heart, and let us turn to our Israeli brothers and sisters and say, we remember you.
How so very moving, and how so very meaningful, even over 1,500 years later, still so appropriate. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.